Okay, let's unpack this. We've got quite a stack of sources in front of us today.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
We're looking at reports, straight from North Korean state media, KCNA,
Hmm.
mixed with analysis from places like AFP, Digi24, and then intelligence assessments too, US and South Korean.
Right, covering different angles.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really get into a highly unusual event.
The ship launch failure.
Exactly. A big one right in front of Kim Jong Un. And the reaction afterwards was swift and pretty severe.
Yeah, incredibly so.
Get ready, because some of these details are quite surprising when you piece them together from the sources.
Well, what's really striking looking at the material is the context, right? This wasn't just any old launch.
No, it was meant to be significant.
Absolutely, part of their push to modernize the Navy. The sources point to this being like a planned state spectacle.
At the Chongjin shipyard, with Kim Jong Un himself there for the big reveal of this new destroyer.
Meant to be a triumph, a real signal of, progress, military progress.
But instead of sliding smoothly into the water, well, the sources describe a major technical mess-up during the launch itself.
Exactly. And it wasn't your standard launch and on, the sources are specific. It was a side launch.
A side launch. That's where they build it parallel to the water and kind of shove it in sideways.
That's the basic idea, yeah. It's pretty common, actually, especially if space is tight in the shipyard.
Okay.
But in this case, something about the execution was, critically flawed. The intelligence reports really highlight that.
Flawed how? Like, what went wrong?
They point towards poor balance, maybe flawed engineering, either in the ship's design or the launch mechanism. Something wasn't right.
And the consequence of that failure during the side launch, it sounds pretty bad based on these reports.
Oh, it was devastating for the ship.
Mm-hmm.
The source material goes into some detail. It talks about severe structural damage.
Yeah, I'm just like...
Specific mentions of a big part of the hull actually being crushed during the launch.
Crushed. Wow. Seriously. And the intel backs that picture up.
Absolutely. Both U.S. and South Korean assessments confirm serious damage. They report that once it hit the water, it just didn't stabilize properly.
So what does that mean practically?
It means the ship is now visibly listing.
Leaning heavily to one side. It's not sitting right in the water.
Precisely. Which points to a pretty fundamental failure in stability or just, major uncorrected damage from the launch itself.
Okay, so you've got this high-profile failure, severe damage to what was supposed to be a key military asset, and the leader saw it all happen.
Yeah, which obviously led to the big question. How did the regime react, especially with such a public and probably costly mistake?
And the sources suggest their reaction wasn't just, oops, technical problem. It was more than that.
Way more. Incredibly so.
Wow.
State media, KCNA specifically, didn't just call it a failure or an accident.
What did they call it?
They ramped up the language big time. Branded it a serious accident,
Yeah.
Okay, but then also a criminal act.
A criminal act. For a technical failure, that seems like a huge leap.
It's an extraordinary escalation,
Yep.
right? And it had immediate consequences.
Okay, what happened?
Well, calling it criminal basically triggered an immediate, full-scale internal investigation.
Yeah.
No messing around.
So heads rolled quickly.
Very quickly. The reports indicate 3 senior figures were identified and arrested. Fast.
3 senior people.
Yeah.
Who did they pin it on?
According to the various reports, it was the shipyard's chief engineer,
Okay, makes sense.
the head of the construction workshop, so the guy overseeing the actual build,
Right.
and also an administrative director. Probably someone involved in management, maybe resource allocation for the project.
So the key technical and management folks right there, accused of direct responsibility for the failure.
Exactly.
But is this really just about punishing those 3 individuals, or is there like a bigger picture here, according to the experts looking at this?
That's where you really need to connect the dots between the sources. Many analysts think the regime is actually using this very public failure.
Using it how?
Leveraging it to send a very strong message throughout its entire defense industry.
Ah, okay.
The extreme reaction, criminal act,
Yeah.
the swift arrests, it's seen as a way to enforce discipline, like a don't let this happen again warning.
To deter future mistakes?
Exactly. Emphasize the absolute severe consequences of failure, especially on projects that have the leader's personal attention. It's less about just this one ship, maybe, and more about tightening control across the whole sector.
Right. Okay, so let's try to sum this up then. What does it all mean? We've seen this technical failure, a pretty bad one, during a side launch at Chongjin.
Resulting in serious damage, a crushed hull apparently,
Yeah.
and the ship left listing, unstable.
And it happened right in front of Kim Jong Un, which
Yeah.
led state media not just to report it, but to call it a serious accident and even a criminal act.
Which in turn led to the immediate arrests. 3 senior guys, the chief engineer, head of construction, and admin director, all accused of direct responsibility.
And while this is obviously a setback for their Navy plans,
Yeah, big one.
experts are suggesting the regime is kind of weaponizing this failure, using the extreme reaction to basically scare the defense industry into line, reinforce discipline.
The tool for control, essentially.
So thinking about this whole incident, the failure, and especially that really intense reaction, it does raise a big question, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. What does it tell us?
Yeah, what does this very dramatic response really signal about the priorities, the internal pressures, maybe the dynamics of accountability inside North Korea, where technical skill seems tangled up with political loyalty, maybe even survival?
It's definitely something to chew on as you process this deep dive into a pretty revealing incident.